I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Lindsay Webb. I currently own the Sunroom Studio. I've been an educator for GK for a couple years now. I'm excited. We're going to bring in a real fun, kind of quick, easy balayage technique. This here is my model, Gracie. As you can see, she's, about a natural level 7-8. She's not super dark. So we're just going to kind of roll in. I'm going to get going on the technique, and then I'll kind of explain things as we go and give you a little more product knowledge on the lightener and some of the other things within the Bombshell line. So we will go ahead and get going. That way we don't waste anybody's time. Just a quick description of what we're going to do. Basically, with this technique, I'm going to divide her into the basic 4 quadrants. We'll start in the back just because she's a little bit thicker there. And I am going to work just a few real fine foils right around the front. She's got a fair amount of hair, but it is baby fine. And so we definitely want to give her a little more of that impact right at the front. So we will go ahead and start with the sectioning, and then I'll kind of explain the lightener that we're using. GK has 3 different lighteners, and we're going to be using the Bombshell, which is our clay-based, can be used open air, you can use it within foil. So it has a lot of different uses and purposes, and you're still going to get that high lift from it, even from the open air. So I just wanted to leave her hair down to start so you guys can kind of see what it looks like. And for her, we are definitely going to go for a lighter blonde, but it's going to be a nice subtle impact. And like I said, I'm just starting out by doing the 4 sections on her, kind of the 2 in the front and then 2 in the back. And I'll kind of explain the partings and everything as we go through this. And if anybody can't see, obviously I'm my own videographer here. So if the positioning is not quite right, let me know and I'll see if I can maneuver it around a little bit. And as we go, if anybody has any questions at all, please feel free to chime in. When I get to talking sometimes, I go through things pretty quick. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Okay, so with her, we have the 4 quadrants here. Today, if you're not familiar with it, this is our Miami Bombshell. It's a clay-based lightener, and it is glue-based, so it's really great for toning out any of like the real warm, kind of golden yellow tones. Reducing the brassiness within the hair. And you have the beauty of it is you can do the open air processing without foil. Obviously, you're going to get a little more lift if you put it within the foil. But that's pretty nice because I can use the same formulation to really get a little more brightness around the front. A lot of times I do foil those pieces. And you can use anything from 8 all the way up to 40 volume. This, along with our developer, again, if you're not familiar, it all contains the Jubexin, which is the anti-aging protein blend. So it's a blend of different proteins to help protect your hair. It adds strength and longevity to the hair without getting that breakage, even with the full lightening service. This here, the standard mix on it is 1 part lightener to 2 parts developer. Any of you out there, you know that you don't always necessarily follow that to a T. Depending on the client's texture and consistency, you may tweak that a little bit. But I do typically start with a 1-to-2 ratio and then add a little more developer if needs be. On her, because I do want it to be a little bit lighter, especially coming down to the ends, I'm going to use a 30 volume. So we can really try and get some nice lift. She is a little bit younger. She's going to be a freshman this year. So I don't want to do anything crazy on her that it's going to be, she's going to have to come in every couple months for retouch. That's why the balayage is a great option. And especially this technique, because it's subtle, but it's pretty high impact. We'll get a lot of lightness to it. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over here and I'm going to mix everything up. And I am just using GK's regular bowl. And then we do have our balayage brush, which is really nice. It has a nice kind of straight bristle, but they do fan out a little bit and they're kind of tapered. So you can get that really nice softness. Yes? I hear something, sorry. No, okay. So I am going to use this for most of the application. And then I will also use our bamboo brushes a little bit for the blending. And they're a really nice, dense bristle brush. And I do like to do that on hair like hers that is really, really fine. That way you can make sure you get good blending and not any hard lines or anything with it. And when I do all of the mixing, I do use, GK has its own scale. If you're not familiar with it, it's nice, it's light, it's compact. It's really great for traveling or just not taking up a ton of space on your counter salon area. And I do everything in grams. That way it's a lot more precise. If you're more comfortable with ounces or whatever measurement you may use, I feel like ounces is typically a little bit better for liquid type products, but especially with the powders and just the standard developers, I think grams you're going to get a lot more precise measurement from that. And I always start with a mix and expect to mix more. That way the product doesn't, lose its power throughout the service. And this is a pretty quick service, what we're going to be doing with the sectioning. So it's not like it's going to die out super fast. But for the first mix, I'm going to do 20 grams of the powder. And like I said, I'm using 30 volume. I do always shake it because this here does have the Juvexin in it also. You just want to make sure that you're shaking it really well. I mean, you don't want to go crazy, but that way that everything's nice and blended and you get the full effect of that within the developer. So I used 20 grams of the lightener. So I'm going to go in and put in 40 grams of the developer. And I do always use one of these little whisks here. And I usually mix this up pretty good. And then I'll let it sit for just a minute. And then I'll give it another little mix right before we go to use it as I'm kind of getting everything out and set up and ready to go. And because one little trick that I have also with the Miami Bombshell, because it is clay-based, it's a little bit of a lighter powder. So I always put my powder in first and my developer on top. That does help a little bit with the casting of the powder as you go to stir it and mix it together. And as you can see here, it's a nice consistency. It's not super duper thick. It should move through the hair pretty well, but it's not so thin that it's going to bleed through either. And this is the 1-to-2 ratio. And like I said, I usually just kind of let it sit as I go to get everything out and ready. Okie doke. I am going to just think maybe we can see this section the best here. I'm going to go ahead and start on this side. And again, if my arms are completely in the way, please yell at me. I do usually, I try and make it as straight of a line as possible coming down the middle of the head. And she does not, like I said, her hair is pretty thick, but it's really fine. But the distance that we're going on her, she does not have a huge surface area. But we are going to be doing diagonal sections on her. well, not diagonal completely, but just a little off center. We're not going to be going in straight like this. We're going to be going more like my first section. I kind of take the top of her ear and just come down at a diagonal. It's probably about 2 inches here from her hairline, starting out there. I'm just straightening that up a little bit. Okay. So we're going to go in with our first area. And right along the bottom, I am, like I said, doing open air, and I do like to use a couple of the mesh styrofoam sheets just on this first layer, not for processing, not for speeding that up at all, just to kind of separate it out, just stays a little bit cleaner that way. So we're going to go ahead and start in, and with her hair being as fine as it is, I'm not one of those that typically does a huge amount of like the back combing or anything like that with the balayage, but I do on this fine of hair like to break it up just a little bit. So I'll go in close to the base and just do like a couple, just to build that up a little bit and break that line. And this one being the first one on the perimeter, we're going to be painting primarily on the top, sides, ends, but I am going to go underneath and put just a little bit right along her hairline here. And what that'll do is just give a little bit of that lightness to the underneath side for her. So like I said, I mixed it, and then I'm going to go in and give it one more quick little mix to make sure there's nothing left over, and that kind of helps lighten it up a little bit more also. And typically, I'll show you before I go in with my application. I go in, and usually I'm going to dip the brush in pretty good, and I'm going to swipe majority of it off, and then I may go in and just coat primarily just one side with it, not the back side. That way I just have a little more control of my application that way. And I did forget to grab gloves, sorry. Throw these on. Lightener and hands don't always mix well together, so. All right. So I have already gone in and done just a little bit of back combing on this section here. And again, I'm going to dip my brush, wipe most of it off, and just put a tiny bit more on the one side. That's about what it's going to look like, not a lot. And I'm actually starting with the side that I did not add the lightener to. And I pull it in the same direction as what your angle is. So pretty much, you know, straight off. I'm not going to over direct it up or down either direction. That way you can really move it and work it with how the fall of the hair is going to be. And again, I start with the side with no added product, and I'm going to start about midway, and I'm going to bring it up pretty close on the one side. And then that's when I kind of flip it over and get a little bit of additional product. Again, I'm keeping it super fine on her because hers is very fine. So I start with a V. I kind of start in the middle, and then I go up each side here. And then given that this is the underneath side of the hair, I'm going to get a tiny bit more product. And again, I'm going to go in with the side that does not have the additional. And I'm going to paint underneath a little, kind of on the same sections, so that she does have a little bit of that impact as she pulls her hair up. She does a lot of sports. You know, that'll give her a little bit of dimension and texture, especially when she's wearing her ponytails and that kind of thing. So from then, I'm going to use the section that had the more product on the brush, and I'm coming in straight in the middle.
Hey everyone, I just have a quick question over here. Is the back combing really that much necessary?
It depends on the texture of the hair. If she was to have like a coarser hair texture, I would not probably do that. But because her hair is so fine, I just want to make sure I break that line up a little bit. I don't do so much back combing that it's going to knot up or anything like that. It's just to break up this top line of her hair, basically. It is kind of hard to see on camera how fine her hair is, but that's just primarily with her texture is the only reason I did that. Because if they do have a thicker, coarser texture, it's not really needed at all.
Okay,
And then
thank you so much.
Then I'm just going to go in and put this mesh here, just basically for it to lay on to kind of keep things clean. Oops, maybe I'm not, her hair may not hold it. So we're not going to do that right this second. So there's the first section. Obviously, it is fairly quick. I was a little bit slower with it just because of the explanation. But we're going to go in about another 1.5 inches up on her. Again, same angle. We're going to let that drop down. And I'm not sure how well you can see with the lighting, but we did do a partial foil on her. We're thinking about a year ago, maybe a little bit less. So that's where you're seeing, you know, the little bit of grow out, which this will be a great technique to kind of blend that. But again, give her a little bit of that higher impact. And I am going to go in, like I said, just a little bit. And this is a pretty big section. This is about 1.5 inches. So the like back combing that I'm doing isn't even really going through the full depth. It's just for that kind of that top line there. And again, dipping my brush off and then swiping and then just getting basically just one side of the bristles covered. The other side has been swiped. I'm going to go in up high again. And again, I'm pulling it directly out from the angle. I'm not over directing, under directing. I'm not going any way except from straight out from that. And I'm going to hit the middle area a little bit. And with the balayage technique, the clay lighteners, I always think less is best. I'd rather go in and get more product as I go. Primarily because it's really hard to take it off, but I can always add more in areas where I feel like it needs it. And on this thicker section here that wasn't doing the framing, that's where I may go in before I, you know, do the bulk of the ends. And this here is our bamboo bristle brush. It's really nice because it's super dense bristle. And especially on the finer hair, like I said, you know, blending is the key. I don't want anything to look like it has lines to it. I want it to look like she was, you know, out in the sun for a while. So once I get that top section applied, I will go in, not quite as high on this next one. And I always apply everything at an angle. With the hair, I don't go straight in. And I'm not even trying to saturate completely into the hair through the ends on that section. It's still more definitely painting on the surface. And I'll take the hair and flip it over if I need to, so I can, again, basically paint on the surface of the hair. I'm not trying to push it down deep into it. You wipe my hand off every time in between. Then we're going to go in with another about 1.5 inch section. So with this, on each side, you're basically going to have 4 major sections on each side. And when we get to the top, this last section up here will basically be like a diamond. We'll show you that. So this is section 3. Give it a good comb out. And again, just a little bit of back combing only because of her hair being so fine. Again, just to break the line.
फिर अगर कभी ब्लो ड्राई किया ना तो फिर इधर को कर दे।
I think someone's speaker's on. I can hear something. I'm not sure if you were speaking to me or not. And again, I'm just going up, you know, each side with basically that V pattern. And I'll go in and just kind of make sure that's nice and blended, that there's not too much concentration of any product in one area. And again, before I move down to the ends here, I will go to the underneath, just on those, you know, those edge pieces there. And this is one of those, you know, quicker techniques, and it will give her quite a bit of lightness, but again, a nice subtlety, because she, you know, we don't want her to feel like she has to have it retouched every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, anything like that, because that's probably not going to happen, is it? No. But it'll have a nice impact still of the lightness. So we're bringing this down, and I usually take the ends, since I'm usually holding them more in a point, and I kind of flatten them in my hand this way, but again, I'm not pushing the product all the way down into it. More. And just let that fall. So the last section up here, like I said earlier, we're gonna have 4 on her, basically 4 sections. If you have someone whose head has a lot more like space to cover, you definitely can bring it down. You can do smaller sections. You could go down inch and 1.5 inches. And then up here, so you have your center part coming up, and then the side part here. Then with the diagonal line, I'm going to go up about another 1.5 inches. This is going to be that little section on the top. This is going to stay out, and we're going to do this little part at the end when it's combined with everything else. So you can tell here, this is where we had previously highlighted in her grow out. So I'm really going to try and make sure I do go in and hit a few of those pieces and those areas to diffuse it a little bit more. But I am doing just a tiny bit of that back combing just up at this top, like 1.5 inches, 2 inches, not enough that it's going to tangle, but we're going to have to like really work at getting them out by any means. And again, starting on the side areas, bringing it up. So Sorry, I'm trying to do it in a way you guys can see the best. Sometimes it's a little wonky with the angles here. And with the exception of this part here, that's going to be part of that diamond shape that I talked about earlier, I am going to bring this section up a little bit higher as far as like I have my V, and I'm going to bring these little highlight or this little section of painting a little higher on the top, only again, just to help kind of blend in those old highlights that are in there a little bit more. I am going in, like I said, with the bamboo brush just to diffuse it a little bit more. Like I said, these ends, I just kind of pulled down, and I'm not trying to saturate all the way through. Again, I'm just making sure I have good amount of coverage that way, and then I will turn it over. And one of the reasons I try and keep her flat like this is because if you're twisting it and turning it, you're gonna get the liner pushing through to the other sections. But if you just try and keep it nice and clean, it'll just stay on that surface area and maintain the dimension of her natural kind of on the inside. And we will let that fall. There we go. So other than my talking, theoretically, this is a pretty quick application process. You'll be able to see kind of from another perspective. So again, we have our section here. I'm going to angle from about the top of the ear down to about 1.5 inches from the hairline, 2 inches. Kind of depends on your client again. And I'm going to angle it up that way. And once you have your first angle set, it's pretty easy to follow along. I am a little more particular about the starting one, just because this is right at her hairline. So. Add up. And again, we're going to start with just a really, really light back comb at the base because of her super fine hair. I just want to make sure it's nice and broken up. Same type of thing. I swiped most of the product off the one side. We're going to bring it a little bit higher. I'm going to come underneath. And again, make sure you're holding it at the angle of how the parting runs, not over, not under directed. Right at the angle. And I do lift up or down a little bit, but if you go this way or this way, it'll kind of shift the direction that you have the hair set in. So you just want to make sure that you're maintaining that angle as you're lightening it, or as you're applying the color, sorry. And again, I did paint a little under on each section there. So I'm gonna pull just a few more pieces through a little bit higher and drop it back down. Basically anything on the perimeter, I'm going to treat it as if it was one of the pieces falling on top. So it's not as important to get, you know, the highlight or the balayage going higher here. It's more on the underneath a little bit higher, just for the effect of how the sun naturally hits the hair. And I'm going to do that. And as you can see, when I go to turn, let's see if I can get a better angle. So as I apply the color down here, again, just on that surface area, and then I hold it and I turn it this way so as that it doesn't really shift the hair's direction or change anything like that. And then I will let that drop down. And we're gonna go about 1.5 inches again. Same angle. Like I said, once you get that first angle set, it's much easier with the partings as you go through. And grab this whole section, give it just a little comb through, make sure there's no knots. And then again, tiny bit of back combing right up here. I'm not going on the underneath at all. I'm just doing this top. And again, starting on this outside perimeter. Sorry, I'm kind of stepping around the light here so I can see. And I'm not 100% sure what mix of people we have on here right now, but if anybody's not familiar with GK or the Bombshell line in general, again, feel free to kind of chime in with any questions. I'll go through some more of the products and give a little more in-depth, you know, once we get our color on. And remember, you know, as I said earlier, it's one of those less is best. I'd rather just kind of keep applying and making sure it's exactly where I want it, not overdo it. Especially with her hair texture where I am really just going for that nice kind of lighter sun-kissed look with her. And up about 1.5 inches again. So theoretically, if you're not talking through it like I am, it's actually really, really super fast to go through, roll through these sections. It's just more about, you know, the accuracy and the placement, and a lighter hand is what's important. And again, we're getting to the section here where we have some previous highlighting right in here. So I'm gonna make sure we do a nice thing with that. Good, okay. Not pulling it. So this is about where her old highlight was. I'm just making sure I'm bringing that a little bit above. And again, pulling the section as I apply straight out from where the part begins. I'm trying to do this at an angle that you can see. So I'm hard to keep this underneath here. Sorry if I'm going to get in your way for a second. Nice and subtle there. And then again, keep it nice and flat as you bring it down. Sure that we have good blending right where we're trying to go from there into the virgin hair line. And then coming down to the ends, I'm going to get not necessarily more saturation per se, because again, I just wanted to stay on that outside layer of the hair. And I do always wipe my hands off in between each section because I really like to get in there and feel the hair and know what's going on. All right, so this is going to be that last section in the back. I'm going in, so it's going to create half of that diamond pattern, keep it on the same angle. Put that out of together. And you can see about an half section here. I'm going to do the teeny tiniest bit of back combing right at that base. And again, with this section, I don't know how well you can see, but there's the old highlight. So we're going to make sure, again, that upper section where you're going to see more of the surface area as you have that fall. So I'm going to make sure I go in and really try and blend in a little bit higher on this one.
black brown नहीं right? Black नहीं, मतलब blackish brown नहीं. Lighter. Lighter.
पानी चाहिए आप?
हाँ please.
And again, make sure you definitely keep your brush, I'd say perpendicular to the part line. So you're going in, you're not brushing it on this way, you're going in with that straight edge, which keeps it nice and, blended and right where you want the lightener to go. And you don't want too much pressure. You want to keep it nice and soft. You can always go back and add more. get it where I want it that way. And again, once you get those ends, keep that section nice and flat. I'm just wanting to make sure I get good coverage on the top portion of the hair, but I do not want to saturate to the middle. So if I keep good tension and just keep it right on that top layer with the brush flatter down through here.
इतना सारी गुच्छे में अंडर 65 $, something like that. मेरा और सभी ये बहुत अच्छा था.
And I don't know if anybody else can hear it. I'm getting a lot of feedback on my end from someone's microphone. I don't know if we want to check and make sure those are muted, unless you have a question. That would be great. Okay, so this is the back section I'll show you. Over here, it's already starting to lighten up really nice. We're getting some really good lift to it already, but we're not afraid if we're going a little to the lighter side, so that'll be okay. I'll bring this back up, sorry. Okay, so basically right now at this top, we have a triangle, again, leaving this out. We're not messing with that right now. And this is where it comes in to get, I may actually start on this side so you can see it a little bit better. So theoretically, it's going to be basically the same technique as what we did in the back, except up here, I'm going to run just a couple really fine baby-like foils along her perimeter. I'll probably do about 2 here and maybe 3 right around the front. We're keeping it super, super light though, not big, heavy pieces, just a really, really fine weave with that. I'm going right against her hairline. Pretty much everything I do where you want that subtlety is always going to be on an angle. I'm never going to go directly, with how the hair falls. It's going to create a lot softer look if you keep that angle right there, even though back here we're going to move up almost the same angle, but it'll be directed a little bit more. So I'm going to do a tiny little weave right here, and we're going to leave this out right along her front. And we're going to pop a foil right back here. Again, the bombshell, the clay lightener can be used in or out of foil. It's wonderful, amazing for open air processing. It's also good, can be used in these situations where you are going to be putting it in foil. It's not going to over process. It's still going to be nice and gentle on the hair. So there's one little foil there, and then I'm going to go right behind that. And that section here is probably about, I'm aiming for about 1/4 to an inch, keep it really, really fine. Just so she has some of these really light pieces that go right around the face there. Just in my experience, one of the biggest reasons I do this is I find that with finer hair textures, no matter how hard you try, sometimes getting a good blend right along the perimeter there with the balayage, the freehand technique is not always the easiest. It can be done for sure, but this is just kind of, you know, a little bit of a hack for that so that you don't have to worry too much about there being any kind of striping or bleeding or anything towards the scalp, because I like to get those, especially on her hair texture, right up against the scalp. So I'm gonna do that. She pretty much is a center part, right, Gracie? You're pretty much where you part here. We're gonna go in here. She's one of those, as with most of us, that we have that very, very fine baby hairs along the hairline. Do a nice little weave there. And GK does have a couple different color brushes. We have this one here. This is specifically our balayage brush. Then we have just a regular color applicator brush. I really, really like the balayage brush. If you're doing obviously a balayage, or if you're gonna go in and do just some really fine baby lights. Again, because the bristles on this, they do basically kind of come to a point. Which is really nice for being able to work that product up close to the hairline without it being too saturated or too much product. And potentially getting any of the bleeding or anything like that around the hairline. Again, tiny little section. We're going about an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch. Weave right on top. Basically, the only hair that's going to be left out is what I'm weaving out. I'm not skipping any. And I am going to do 3-foot foils right on this front perimeter here. And that's really going to help because we are doing her balayage so subtle. It's going to help give her that little bit of a higher impact light right around the front. And it'll feel like it's a little more done, a little more blonde that way too. Because visually what she sees looking in the mirror is what she, you know, the client's going to feel the whole head resembles. And I do typically do these first. I'm okay with these, obviously, because it's in foil, so it's going to get a little bit warmer than the rest. I'm fine with this processing to a little bit lighter, but I do typically go in and foil both sides first, and then I'll go into the more freehand technique after that. Again, here it is a tiny little section right at the front. right on these perimeter pieces, just behind the temple. I'm only gonna do 2 foils, and then closer up to the front here, I will do the 3, again, just for that little higher impact. I know a lot of times when people do the quote unquote money piece, they almost, not always, but a lot of times only do this top front section. But I definitely like it where you have that blendage that'll come all the way down around the perimeter. Visually, for me, it just seems to make a little more sense that way, and it doesn't take that much longer to pop 2 more foils in. And at this point in time, since I've used the same formulation, even for the foil area, I'm starting to get a little bit low on lightener. Make sure there's a tiny bit left, but I am gonna go ahead and mix up a little bit more also. Doing okay? And this time I did about half of the same mix that I did before. I did 10 ounces of, or not ounces, I'm sorry, 10 grams of lightener, 20 grams of 30 volume. Again, I'm gonna give it a quick mix up. And then as I go in, I'm gonna section out this next area of her hair here. And then I'm gonna give it one more little stir up before I go in and use it. Okay, so for these sides here, we've done the foils right along the front. Try and make it so you can see here. And this whole side is basically going to be treated the same as what the back was. And because I did the 3 foils here instead of the 2, it's going to, this part line here will be just a little bit off. So, but right at where the foil line ends, I'm not going to do that full 1.5 inches like I would have underneath, because I do personally like a little bit more lightness right around the front. So that first section of actual balayage freehand, I'm only going to go about 1.5 inches away. not inch and a half, half an inch, I'm sorry, from that main foil line. This will be a little bit of a bigger section, lengthwise. So just make sure you're conscious of that as you do the application. And because we have the foils right here, I'm not going to be quite as concerned as applying to the underneath level or the underneath of this level, just because it's going to, it's a little bit of a smaller section. And so it'll fall and you'll still get that lightness from the foil area. And again, I'm going to do, because she, you can see, already has these little baby hairs here. I'm going to do the tiniest bit of back combing, not a lot, more so just to actually push those kind of back out of the way. And again, the angle that I'm holding it is directly perpendicular to the part line. And again, I'm going to give the lightener a little stir up again. Make sure everything is combined really nice. I'm going to drop that for a second. I need my other hand. And it has, you know, a good consistency. It's not too thick, but it's also not just like dripping off of the brush or anything. Okay, so we have this section. Again, I didn't do a ton of back combing. I just kind of pushed those little baby hairs back. In that way. Again, same thing. I'm going to load my brush and then I'm going to kind of swipe off and just grab a little bit extra for the one side. So basically you're going to have some on this side, but it's primarily off. That's going to give you a little more control. And then I dipped a little bit more so you have some on the ends there. And the side that has the least amount, I'm going to come, let's see. Sorry, trying to get the positioning here. So I'm going to come right up closer with these right on the front with, you know, the quote unquote V kind of shape, even though it's not really a V on this big of a section. Kind of keep those little baby hairs back. So I'm using the side with the least amount of product on it. And then right up to that front, right in through here. And then about a third of the way down, still using the side with the least amount of product, going in, pushing that in. And then once I have that kind of in that area, I am going to go in and try and make sure I break up that line just a little bit from that old highlight that was there. Because this is what you're going to see right at that front of the face. I'm going to use the bamboo brush just to diffuse it a little bit. Again, less is best. I don't want this to look like, oh, she has a big like chunk of blonde right there. I want to make sure it's nice and blended and soft. Typically, if you have less saturation, less lightener on the hair, obviously, you know, it's not going to lighten quite as heavily. So that's just one use of that bamboo brush to come in and be able to kind of soften that a little bit. Again, I'm keeping the lightener right on the surface. I'm going to give it a little turn. This was kind of a bigger section, so it's separated a little, but I'm going to try and turn it keep it as flat as I can so I don't saturate completely in. There we go, and let that just fall and hang with the natural flow of the hair there. And I'm going to go up about 1.5 inches, same as I did in the back. And you can definitely see her grow outline here. Not a bad thing, it's just been a while. And again, just the tiniest bit of back combing right in that section, kind of, again, more to like lift those little baby hairs out of the way. Make sure we get good blending on that surface. Upper and lower levels of this, again, keeping it, perpendicular to the part, pulling it straight off. And everybody's heads are shaped a little different, and all of you doing this technique are professionals. So you know your client's hair, and you can adjust this technique for, whatever suits you best. But, the larger the section, typically the more subtle the outcome is. She's definitely going to have some great lift. She's not super dark. And she's not quite at that stage in life where we really want her to be a platinum blonde either. So that's why this is so nice. The Bombshell Lightener does give such a nice subtle lift, but up to higher impact. It has up to 7 levels of lifting power, and that's even with open air processing. So something to keep in mind. It does just sometimes, take a little bit longer. So you do have to be patient with it to get that level of lift out of it. And I'm making sure I'm kind of trying to diffuse that old highlight area a little bit more. I do feel like a record on repeat sometimes, but I think it's important. And, just remember that you can always add more product to the hair. Near impossible to take it away. So. Again, just trying to keep it on that surface. I'm not trying to separate the hair so that I get saturation to the inside. I'm just trying to keep it nice and flat there. All righty, so we're going to come up here to this top section. And remember that we have this diamond pattern that we were kind of trying to create at the top. So that section there is going to fall over there with him. And just super light, subtle back combing. And again, because it is that top section, I want some nice lightness around here. So I am on this one point, just bringing it a little bit closer. I typically don't go all the way to the scalp. I want it to have kind of that nice summer, little bit of grow out vibe to it, which is really great for, a lot of the younger clients who aren't going to come in every, couple months to get their hair done. Higher impact, less maintenance is kind of what I consider this. All right, we're going to turn her around. You might be able to see this section a little bit better. Let's see. Okay, so again, quickly, here's that area that was foiled. So I'm gonna go right behind there, about ½ inch. ½ inch to an inch. I mean, kind of judge it. I just want to make sure that I have a clear defined section for doing the painting. I don't want like 1/8 of an inch where this higher foil comes. And this is one of those with a little bit higher surface area because it's a longer section. Teeny tiny bit of back combing just to pull those little baby hairs out of the way. And again, because this is a smaller section, I'm not going to be concentrating on applying on the underneath quite as much because I really want to make sure I get good blendage through this top here. Again, I'm pulling it right up close to where her part line is, very close to where that foil kind of begins. Same with this underneath section. And again, making sure you're pulling it perpendicular to the part line. Not over directing, not under directing. We want to make sure it's coming straight off of the head there. And I am going in and trying to make sure I'm blending in these little highlights very, very subtly. I'm just trying to pull that line a tiny bit higher. Yeah, I'm going to go in with the bamboo brush and just kind of make sure that it's nice and diffused. There's no heavy areas, especially up around here, that have extra saturation or anything like that. I'm trying to keep it as nice and flat as possible. And then again, about 1.5 inches. Really, we only have this section, one more, and then I'll show you what to do with that little diamond pattern at the top. Mostly just to kind of pull those little baby guys out there. And always kind of start with that little bit of that V pattern, hit the outsides first. That's where we're going to go up highest. And it's, I can always add more. I can go higher with it. I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm, especially up through here, getting that good blendage. And as I get down towards the ends, again, remember, hold it really nice and flat. You don't want that hair separating out a ton. Trying to just get good coverage on that surface area. We'll give it a little turn. Coverage on that surface area. And theoretically, what that'll do is just, like I said earlier, leave a little bit of that natural tone in the middle for that depth. So she doesn't feel like platinum blonde coming all the way, you know, down at her ends, but she'll still have a lot of nice lightness down there. I'm gonna finish off that little section here for the diamond pattern. Doing okay, guys? Just making it through. And I'm gonna just pull some of those little baby hairs up. I'm not really even like doing back combing per se right now, just kind of getting those little guys out of the way. That'll help with the blendage a lot. And theoretically, if I wasn't talking like I've been doing this whole time, and trying to be really descriptive, typically this application on her thickness and her texture would be 30 to 45 minutes max. I realize we're, you know, a little over an hour right now. I tend to go a little bit slower when I'm trying to explain it, that's for sure. Trying to keep it nice and flat. I'm gonna hit this under section. There we go. Oh. All right, this is the part where it gets super technical. Just kidding. It's not really technical at all. I'm trying to find my release there. Okay. So we have the diamond pattern. We're gonna do 2 different sections here as far as the balayage application goes. I feel like it's very important. I need to tip your head back just a little bit. This section here is typically what falls. This is what you're going to see kind of falling on top of everything. So I do, now that we have this diamond here, you know, edge, get those out of the way, all that, you know, the 4 sides. What I do is basically a chunky weave into this from corner over here to corner over here. And what that'll do, 1 of 2 things, break it up. And then also kind of, like I said, break up that fall line. But then as it does fall, you'll just have a little more texture and dimension. So I start on this corner or whichever corner you want. I'm starting on this one. And I'm gonna do about 1/2 inch zigzag to kind of separate the hair and try and end on that other corner. So we have a nice little zigzag pattern here. Gives it, you know, a little bit of breakup, like as if you were gonna foil it. And then I will again hold it directly out. You can put your head over. Holding it directly out from the head as if it had that straight part. Again, I'm going to just pull a few of the little baby hairs out of the way. I'm not doing like any hard back pulling there. And same concept with kind of coming in this way on each side. I'm not really focusing on the underneath quite as much as some of the other sections through the back. Again, I'm just surface painting down to the ends, keep it right on the outside. Give it a little turn. And the last section will be the top part of that diamond. Again, nothing crazy, just gonna push her little baby hairs out of the way. Sure it's combed out nice. And this section is a little bit smaller than the other one. And as soon as I get the lightener on this section, I actually, in my salon, I don't even own a dryer for processing. I do have a halo, so it does not put out any air. I definitely, as far as heat goes, this product does not need it. You do not need to apply heat for application. And I definitely would not apply a high heat because it will, you know, with the clay lighteners, the open air processing, you don't want to dry it out. You want to maintain as much of that moisture as possible. But because of time's sake for the class, I am going to pop her over under the halo processor just to get a little bit of warm on her, so that we're not sitting here for the next, you know, hour waiting for her to process. But I will show you here. And mostly I'm going to focus the heat kind of towards that top and sides, but you can see this back here is really, really close. It's already a really nice kind of light beige blonde. And we're going to kind of let that keep processing. I am not going for a super platinum blonde on her like we discussed before, but it has, you know, nice blendage. Are you doing okay there? I am going to put her down and I'm going to move my camera and light over here a little bit, and I'm gonna pull Gracie over this way and put a little warm on her. It's pretty warm in here already, kind of how Kansas is, but again, I personally would not use a dryer with the bombshell lightener because you don't want to dry it out. Like I said, though, it is the halo, so it's not creating any airflow. And while she is processing, I'm going to go through a few of the other products within the bombshell line. And then if anybody has any questions about anything, please feel free to ask. We got a little lightener on me, look at that. Okay, so obviously, you know, we're a little more familiar, hopefully, with the lightener. Please feel free to chime in. If not, I will go on to one of our other staples within the line. If you guys are all familiar with GK, you know that we are known, I don't want to say primarily, but really well known for our smoothing and taming system. Everything has, again, the G-Vexin in it. So it's going to help hydrate, recondition, strengthen the hair. And it's a different type of a protein versus a typical keratin protein that you would think of. It is a blend of different proteins and it creates the anti-aging effect on the hair as far as the restorative and reconstructive powers of it. So this here is one of our smoothing systems. For the taming that will give you curl reduction and help tone blondes. It's 100% formaldehyde free, which is amazing. And it also has that beautiful kind of blue violet undertone to it. So if you're doing a highlight, or any kind of high lift blondes, and you just want to be able to maintain, I don't even say ashy, but reduce the brassiness in the hair, and then also be able to do a smoothing at the same time to get that frizz reduction, up to 100% frizz reduction, which if anybody is from the Midwest right now, we are in the throes of humidity. It is awful. Our hair is crazy frizzy right now. So this here definitely helps with that. Again, 100% frizz reduction, and it does give the curl reduction also, and it has the added toning agent. So you get two things in one. You don't have to schedule a service. This can be applied directly after a highlight or highlight service. I do sometimes even have clients that we've colored and they've been outside in the sun, and like, let's say level 6 or even a level 7, so they're not the pale blondes, but they just feel like they've gotten a little brassiness from, you know, chemicals in the pool, being out in the sun. They're really not ready to color. They just want to push off a little more towards end of summer for the color. This is a great option to just help reduce any of those warm, kind of unwanted golden tones, and still give the smoothing factor for the hair. So that is amazing. Any questions on the bombshell smoothing? Anybody? No? Okay. And I will go on here also. Let's see here. So this here is the bombshell shampoo. One of my faves. I use this, I don't know, probably 50% in lieu of actually doing a toner. It kind of can give you more one of those express tones, so you don't have to sit and wait for the toner to process quite as long, especially if you have those clients that really do pull a very, very nice blonde, that they just want to reduce, you know, a little bit of the warmth, just a little bit. This is great, great, great. You can do the service in salon directly after highlighting when the cuticle of the hair is really a little more porous because you just highlighted before conditioning. You can do this and you can just do a one-step shampoo. You can apply it and let it sit on 5 to 10, 15 minutes. And it works amazingly for helping tone. And this is also something that's great to send your customers home with. It's probably one of the most pigmented violet silver-based shampoos that I've ever used, but it doesn't necessarily turn your hair purple. Some of them, just the way it interacts with the porosity of your hair, it does turn it purple because most of them actually have a different pH, so it actually strips the hair a little bit before it deposits, and this does not do that. Helps equalize. It's still hydrating. Your hair is not going to feel dry afterwards. If you've ever used a lot of silver violet shampoos, your hair feels super dry, and you typically have to do the deep conditioner or use some different leave-in conditioners after using it. That you're not going to have to do that with this. It's still really hydrating for the hair and creates some amazing tones. I actually just used on mine the other day. I'm kind of going with more of a warmer blonde right now. I'm kind of working the ash out of my own hair, but this is great to help kind of keep the brassiness out of it. So there's that one. And then I'll move on to our bombshell masks. And these can be used in conjunction with the deep conditioning mask. I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar with this. It is amazing. If you do a treatment with this, you take the client, you, after shampooing or doing color, you apply this with a couple drops of our serum. You apply it, you put them under heat, and it kind of gives them a little bit of a feeling of what a smoothing treatment could feel like on the hair. Obviously, it doesn't last as long, only lasts a couple weeks. It's not going to give the curl reduction, but it will definitely help give that frizz reduction. It adds a ton of shine to the hair. So these here are basically formulated the same way as the deep conditioning mask, except these have a tint to them. So currently we have the ultra blonde, we have the red, and we have the lavender. The ultra blonde, don't be afraid by it. It is amazing though. So this is a toning mask. It is a separate treatment. It is a deep conditioner and tone all at the same time. Again, it's wonderful for going just on top of those blondes who really, really need that added conditioning, but they don't necessarily want to do a smoothing at this time or anything like that, you would just use your silver shampoo, apply this, put them under heat with a bag dryer or like a halo or something that has the infrared heat. You just want to make sure you heat them up a little bit. And it is going to have such an impact as far as how their hair feels. It's going to feel amazing. And again, all of these are also sulfate free, as with the whole line. And it has a really nice toning agent. Again, it's a little bit scary going on because it is such a pigmented product. Kind of looks a little bit like tar, I'll be honest. When it first released, I was a little bit afraid, thinking my hair was going to turn like gray black. It does not do that, I promise. It's amazing. And then we also have, I will move on. I will show you the lavender first. These other two actually do have the direct pigment in them. So it's a non-oxidative color. Amazing. It lasts, typically it'll start to fade. 10 to 12 shampoos is when it starts to fade. And it will fade out, but it just takes a little bit, obviously. The lighter the hair is for the application, the longer it's going to take for it to fade completely. This one here is the lavender. I will touch it because it will not stain me quite as much. You can see it is definitely like a purple lavender color, but it's more definitely in the cooler family versus warm. It is not like a reddy lavender. It's not even as like purple as what the container is. It's beautiful on. I love, love, love this. Although GK's reds do stay amazingly well, if they do fade or when they do fade within our color line, and they fade on tone, which is really, really nice. They don't brass out. This is really, really great for putting on top of those people that do have the violety reds, or even the ones that are like chocolatey brown, but they just want a little bit of a cooler kind of reddish tone to it. This is awesome to put on top. Again, it does come out. It's a great way for them to maybe try a little bit of a new color series, but also to get that super hydrating effect from it. And just to kind of revive the color, if you do have those violet red colors that you've done previously and they're not quite ready, that's a great one to do. This one here is, I would say, probably our most intense as far as the pigment goes. And this is the red. And I will tell you, it is red. I have done it on my hair a couple years ago when I was very, very blonde. Because why not? It was new. I wanted to see what it did. And it was amazing. And it was fun. And on the really, really blondes, again, it will be 10 to 12 shampoos probably before it starts to fade. And when it does start to fade, it kind of goes through progression of the really fun kind of pinks, kind of corally, rosy golds, depending on how dark their hair is or how light their blonde is. But it is super duper red, and it will stain your hands. So use gloves when you apply it for sure. And it is, like I said, amazing for the really, really light blondes. It will give that really high, vibrant, intense red. Or if you have the people that have more of the warmer reds, actual like oxidative color, and they faded a little bit and they just want to revive it a little bit and get a little more moisture, especially when it's really, really dry out, this is a great option to do that without having to recolor quite as soon. This is amazing. These here are definitely in salon treatments. I would not want a client trying to do this at home, only because of the level of pigment that it is. It would be a little bit scary, but they're great add-on service. And again, hydrate, moisturize, reduce the frizz in the hair. And something you can do with either of these, not necessarily the ultra blonde because you don't need to, but with the red or the lavender, if you're going on top of, say, a natural, not natural, but like a highlighted blonde, and they're just wanting a really soft, subtle, kind of like dusty lavender or baby pink, you can mix these together with the deep conditioner. I do have a client that is pretty platinum blondie. We highlight her every 6 weeks, but she likes to have a little bit of a pop of pink. So we just mix these two together and create kind of like a dark bubblegum kind of pink, and then apply it with foil. And it just makes the most beautiful pink. And then usually within 6 weeks when she comes back, it's faded completely, and we can either do the same thing or try something a little different. So that's pretty much what's in the bombshell line itself, which is kind of what we're going over today. Does anybody have any questions about anything in that series itself? Anybody?
Hi, Lindsay. As for now, we do not have any new question. We can end the session. Thank you so much for sharing your technique and amazing knowledge.
Oh, anytime. I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.